The DOT project focused on safety, and we're very glad that you're here to join us for this first issue. Before we begin, I'd like to say what's going to happen today. We're going to have a presentation from the traffic engineer about these options for complete streets. Then we will give people the opportunity to look at the maps that are part of this presentation, and they will be in the back room.
I am a
So
traffic
everybody
engineer.
can get back there. If you need flexible training, there was one on.
That was accurate.
Also in fact, and available around are 3x5 cards on which we would like you to write any questions that you have about this.
Why can't we speak? And ask and talk about what's bothering us.
That will come at another point in time. Today, we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to give you a full presentation.
So why can't we ask questions about who's stop?
Yeah, just let us do the presentation because you're talking weird.
We apparently can't.
Wow.
Okay. We'd like to get on with this. We'd like to get on with this by thanking first the audiovisual people who helped us set things up. Okay? First it's Rebecca Brooks, then Fanny Frizon, Ellen Colville, Yvonne Rojas Cohen, and Lori Osmond. So thank you to all of them. Next, we'd like to introduce you to the Complete Streets members that are here. First is my co-chair.
Hi, I'm Howard Cohen, co-chair with Grace Murphy on the Complete Streets Committee. We have Robin Collins, also from the committee, Mary Smith, and Kevin Blitz, and Kevin Smith. We're just missing Jay Decker, Shin Bogner, and Jeff Figliano.
Yeah.
And we also have Eva, who is a new alternate who joined the committee just in the last few weeks. We'd also like to welcome Mark Crook, who's here from New York State DOT. He's here to observe and to answer questions maybe later. Mark Crook, K-R-U-K, Mark Crook.
Spoke to you, Mom.
And then we have Laura Rickey, who is the alternate from the town board, who's been at all of our Complete Streets meetings. She's our partner to work through all the town issues. And then I have the pleasure to introduce Anula, our supervisor. And really, Anula, we have wanted this meeting for a long time, and we want to thank Anula for getting her arms around this project as quickly as she could in her tenure and to make this meeting happen. And hopefully this is the first of many that we can really start to look at this project together and make the most sense of it for the town of Woodstock. So welcome.
All right, hi, everybody. So first and foremost, I do want to thank everybody for coming out. An amazing turnout, really. And like Howard said, this is the first of many. I would like to share with you that I myself was kicked out of a meeting last year, so I understand some of the frustration about not hearing about the project and what's going on. And I want to assure you that it was not Complete Streets. They've been wanting to bring this to the forefront, so this will be the first of many, and this is our starting point. So I recognize the hard work of the committee. They put a great deal of time and energy into making sure that Woodstock has a voice in the Department of Transportation part of the project, and ensuring that the feedback that they've been hearing is actually going over to the folks who are here to speak with us tonight. And so that's something that's really important. And you'll hear also about the second project, which is the post office to post office, which is something that is up for discussion, and there'll be follow-up smaller groups and interactive maps and anything and everything that we need to help people become comfortable with this. I'm just gonna start speaking louder, so it's this fades out. You can hear me. So my hope for tonight is that everyone hears the same information, and we understand where things are right now. And then we all kind of level set this, so we can, from the same starting point, understand where we are and then figure out where we want to go together as a community. That's really important because there's been just not enough good information put out there to date, and we're gonna do better moving
One of you
forward.
guys will be at each.
So my office holds all
Ava's
of
doing
that,
mine,
and that's something
and I'm
that
gonna
we're
ask
committed
Crystal to
to.
do Grace's. Yeah.
Um,
I'll let you-
I'm also glad, so, I'm here to introduce some folks. We've got 3 people who I'm supposed to be introducing. I'm gonna start with Brian Slack, so bear with me. Brian is the Ulster County Principal Transportation Planner, and he has a master's in urban and regional planning from the University at Buffalo. And he began working as a professional planner in Rochester, New York. In 2011, he moved to Ulster County and he worked as a transportation planner for the Ulster County Transportation Council. In his role at the UCTC, he focuses on all elements of the transportation planning process, including bike, pedestrian, highway, safety, and transit planning, as well as state and federal rules governing the use of transportation system and federal aid. And Brian also has served as the coordinator of traffic safety for Ulster County Traffic Safety Board since 2021. And the next person who I'm going to introduce is Lindsay, over there with the purple jacket. And Lindsay, thank you. I have met you before. And
Thanks, Rick.
Lindsay is gonna primarily be the one who's gonna speak to us tonight.
You're special, Harold.
Lindsay is the principal engineer and planner with Verity Engineering. She's got nearly 20 years of active transportation planning and engineering experience. And her experience ranges from statewide trail systems such as the Empire State Trail and citywide networks to complete streets implementation, knowing that each layer leads to more people feeling comfortable walking and bicycling. The integration of engineering and planning experience allows her to consider broader planning vision and innovative concepts
I
while
have a couple
remaining
more
focused on the
questions.
details for successful implementation. And the third person who I'm introducing is Neil. Neil Betez is the former supervisor of New Paltz, and I invited Neil here tonight because New Paltz went through something very similar to what we're talking about, and I thought that Neil had very relevant experience to share with us. And some interesting things about Neil. Neil actually holds an undergraduate degree in forestry and a PhD in ecology. And prior to serving as the town supervisor of New Paltz for 8 years, he conducted research in urban ecology, which focuses on understanding how ecological processes function in cities, how human actions influence them, and how to make urban areas more sustainable in the face of climate change. And Neil currently serves as chair of the Village of New Paltz Shade Tree Commission, which oversees tree removal and supports tree planting efforts, and is a member of the Ulster County Traffic Safety Board, which promotes pedestrian and transportation safety. That's a top grant, and designed and initiated construction of the shared use path on Henry Dubois Drive. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Neil, who will share his firsthand experience. And again, before I turn this over to Neil, I just want to say thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And again, this is the first of many, so thanks.
So we're not fully rehearsed, but I just want to mention, we do have Jeff Collins, our legislator here. And of course, we have Laurie and Lily, who we all know from our town board. And thank you, Chief, Police Chief, for being here, and anybody else from the town board present. But thank you both. Laurie, we mentioned. There you go.
Hello, everyone. So I put some notes together. I just want to make sure that you can, I'm clear with what I'm saying, but I noticed that in your 2018 comprehensive plan, if you're familiar with the comp plan, it's probably one of the most important things that a municipality can have. It says, under the recommended actions for safer movement of pedestrians, bicyclists, and persons with disabilities, This would include coordinating with the New York State Department of Transportation to determine the feasibility of improving the New York State Route 212 and 375 corridors with widened paved shoulders to accommodate bicycle lane walking areas, and that this project could be later expanded to develop dedicated, fully separated shared use. So that's more in there. The project now isn't just, it's, so maybe can you hear me if I yell really loud?
People accessibility.
Yeah, I'll talk on this, so the big thing is that project, if it's in your comp plan, already involved community input, feedback, and consensus, and the town board already voted on it. So it's very important that it's in the comp plan already, and hopefully. Yeah, well, let me finish talking here. As someone who worked project on Henry W. when I was supervisor, I want to share some of the things I learned. The Henry W. project was about a mile long on a road that had some sidewalks and lanes on a road with an average daily traffic of about 4,000 with a speed limit of 30 miles an hour, which compares to 5,500 vehicles and 5 miles on 212. And so we added a protected bike lane, or what's called a shared use path to the road, and that had that the road had bike lanes beforehand. And so I just wanted to point out a few things that I used really in to talk about that project with the public while we were doing. We had a lot of pushback and feedback. So more people ride once you put a project in like that. Studies have shown that bike lanes attract 4 times as many riders as those with no bike infrastructure. And while this reduces vehicle emissions, which is what my PhD research was on, and it has significant impacts on our health as well as the environment. Protected bike lanes promote daily active transportation, which reduces risks of heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. And as someone who rides regularly, I can tell you it improves mental health quite significantly. Research shows that adding protected bike lanes reduces collisions and injuries by 30 to 50% in the immediate area, benefiting not just pedestrians and bicyclists, but also drivers, since they slow traffic down. One study found that protected bike lanes carry only about 4% of the risk associated with riding in mixed traffic. Because they are safer, children, seniors, and people with disabilities who are often deterred by traffic are more likely to use them. And while the benefits are obvious for kids, such as decreased screen time, which is a big concern, for seniors, they are more likely to age in place because the low stress infrastructure, like protected bike lanes, supports mobility and physical health.
Low hanging fruit.
Finally.
Finally.
But finally, there are significant local economic benefits. Studies have shown that some areas seeing sales increase by 8.8% for stores near protected bike lanes because they attract tourists and people are more likely to shop locally. Now before we built our shared bike use path, there was opposition, even though it was an outcome plan as well as a safe school plan and others. But people didn't want us cutting down 100 trees, even though we were going to replace them. And we did replace them.
You need one that's more tree, not less.
Yeah. So let me finish before you interrupt me again, please. Many people just don't like change. And especially people who live along the road kept saying they wanted it to be safer. As someone who looked at the bike and traffic safety and heavy traffic before it was constructed, and now daily when I ride to work, I have noticed that a lot of the benefits I just talked about, which I also talked about when we were planning on our project, are not just theoretical, but they're real. Before it was built, there were people walking and riding on it, but now there is more and a much more diverse group of people on the road every day. I ride daily, And I have not seen, I ride it every day back and forth to work. I have not been on that road one time and not seen multiple people on it every time, including seniors, people in wheelchairs, people jogging, people walking with small children, pushing carriages, or people walking dogs. Also, do you know that what people complain about now, that it's there? They complain that the snow isn't cleared off fast enough because they want to use it so frequently. Even though it's done very quickly on the roads because it's required, if you get a TAP grant, that it has to be handicap accessible. And one thing I never thought about, but I noticed this past winter, once we had all the snow, and if you walked in the hamlet here in Woodstock, the sidewalks were probably pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people around this shared use bike path, get plowed and salted like the highways. And it was a safe place for people to walk and get exercise in the middle of the winter, especially seniors. I saw people running, I saw little kids on it. It was a place where everyone was going to because it was safe for them to go to in the middle of the winter. It's a very important thing to think about the big picture, long term, not just say no to every single thing that's going on. The big thing is this is gonna help seniors and little kids a lot. Yes, it will. The studies have shown that. You may not think that, but the study, science has shown that it does it. And I've experienced a year, and I can tell you, it happens. So the benefits outweigh the costs.
Where?
They do not.
Where?
Out here. Oh, Neil, here, that's on to me now.
I'm wondering where you got your.
Okay. Hopefully I can multitask with changing slides and hoping the mic doesn't cut out on me. Hi again, I'm Lindsay. I'm gonna walk through presentation, really at a high level, talking about the different components of the project, the history of the project.
What's your last name, please?
Lindsay Zefting, Zefting. Very unique. You'll be able to find me on Google. So as far as the agenda for the presentation and following the presentation here, I'm going to go through the project history. I'm going to define the projects because we are kind of talking about two projects but related. Go through the funding, the schedules, and then I'll talk through the projects. So the Post to Village Green project, the current plans, some alternatives and compromises that are under consideration. Post to post, again, talking about the current plans and alternatives and compromises. Then I'll talk about the transition between those two projects and the possibilities that I've been looking into. And then I have snippets and cross sections within this presentation of what we're talking about and what this might look like. The preliminary plans, so end to end of the corridor, are in the back room. So we'll take a break. We can go back, look at those, and have an opportunity to discuss, and then we'll come back to do a more formal Q&A after. So project history. So the original project, this first project that is Post to Village Green, began as a bridge replacement project by DOT. And I will preface, I am here as a representative for the town. I am an engineer working with the town on this project. I'm not working for DOT. They're doing a great job though. But to clarify, so it began as a bridge replacement project, which included sidewalk reconstruction to make sure that the town is within ADA compliance. So that was sidewalks replacement as necessary and widening out to 5 feet on both sides of the corridor. And we do have those plans here with us today as they currently stand. The Complete Streets Committee advocated for looking within that project because this is a huge project to rebuild the corridor. Can we do better to rehabilitate the roadway corridor? Can we look at other facilities for accommodating cyclists rather than just sharing the road? How do we better accommodate pedestrians along the corridor? So we started looking at that. Then, the library moving to Bearsville is an impetus. Concept plans were completed for a path between Bearsville, and a TAP grant was submitted in 2024. Unfortunately, the TAP grant wasn't awarded to the town at that time. But DOT did agree to complete the preliminary design for the post-to-post project. So that's what they have started that process of preliminary design for post-to-post. So we're here to communicate where we're at and what that project is starting to look like and get your feedback on that. Going the wrong way, sorry. All right, so the limits, post to Village Green, the limits are Shoemaker to Rock City Road. Status currently, it's in preliminary design. The schedule is to start construction in summer 2027. It's got about $25 million in funding. Mark's nodding, I've got it correct. That project's being led by DOT. Post to post is Wittenberg to Shoemaker, so the rest of the corridor, as the project name, and I give DOT credit for nicknaming this project the post to post, aptly named. It's in preliminary design. The schedule is to be determined because construction is not currently funded. The town has submitted for a TAP grant, but awards won't be announced for another couple of months. So that funding has been submitted. It was approximately $7 million. The max amount you could request for a TAP grant was $7 million. The town match, if it were to be awarded, is about 1.6, 1.7 million. However, there is the possibility, given that this is a state corridor, that, and typically federal funding is a 20% match, there's a high likelihood that the state would chip in another 15%. So it would likely only be a 5% match for the town if awarded. The overall, the town match currently as it stands in the grant application was between 1.6 and 1.7 million. I don't have the exact number. The project is being led by DOT again, but it is at the town's request. So one of the things I want to get into, and I'm going to cover this at a high level, this is me geeking out on some engineering here, is the design criteria. And this matters when we start to talk about how we potentially reallocate space, why things need to be a certain width. Often people will say, well, we can only have this 2-foot walkway or this, and there's certain things that we need to meet as engineers to make sure that we are accommodating everyone safely. So lane widths in the rural condition, when you're out in the post-to-post section, minimum lane widths is 11 feet, minimum shoulder widths of 4 feet. When you start to get into town, the character changes. It's a different roadway corridor. 10-foot minimum travel lanes, 12-foot desired, 0-foot shoulder minimum. Then sidewalks, 5-foot minimum. If you're going to have a shared use pass, so you're mixing pedestrians and cyclists, you have a 10-foot minimum that is recommended, or 10-foot minimum, 12 feet is recommended. Some other kind of characteristics of the corridor measured out kind of towards Shoemaker. Vehicles you see on the day, about 5,500 vehicles per day. It's about 4% truck traffic, and it's about 45 miles an hour as you start to come into the village. So speeds will vary. When you actually get in the village measured, kind of past the village green, that was actually under 30 miles an hour. Another thing too, I want to note from a design criteria perspective, because you'll see it as we start to go through some of the design elements. Oh, so close to getting it. Wired. Okay. I'm gonna just leave that one there. It wasn't cutting out at all. Okay. All right, so another thing good. All right, note is that parking currently for New York state law is not allowed within 30 feet of an intersection or within 20 feet of a crosswalk. So that'll be relevant, and I'll bring it up again when I get to that. So post to Village Green, DOT is preparing the plans as proposed. Again, this is primarily bridge replacement. Those bridges do need to be replaced. So that's an important factor, but not what I'm discussing today because I'm not a structural engineer. But also with that is 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of Route 212 within the project limits. As part of this project, They are looking at, we'll be implementing a reduced speed limit now that the state allows it, so a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit within the project limits. So they're incorporating that into their design, so it'll be incorporated as it gets implemented. So this is what the cross section looks like. And again, I know there's other screens around the room too, but I can kind of keep the slides going as we circle around again. But generally speaking, you see you've got your 5-foot sidewalk directly adjacent to that, your 8-foot parking lane, 2 11-foot travel lanes, a 1-foot shoulder, and then again, your 5-foot sidewalk on the other side. Generally speaking, that is kind of the typical section of the corridor in the DOT plans. Yep. And again, you'll see it on the plans. So 5-foot sidewalk adjacent to 8-foot parking lane, 2 11-foot travel lanes, and a 1-foot shoulder. And then directly adjacent to that, another 5-foot sidewalk. Kind of standard section. This is very reflective of what the existing condition is today.
Accessible parking spaces.
The other thing here is, again, why the 25 doesn't, all the clapping, it doesn't sound like I needed the slide. But, a lot of the impetus of this, and it's happening across the state, is 25 miles an hour is safer for drivers, for cyclists, and pedestrians. We can't extend the 25 mile an hour for the entire length of the corridor, and that's not what we're talking about, because any speed limit reduction needs to be justified, both with design and knowing that design will reflect people naturally driving slower. Speed limit signs don't actually slow people down. It just lets our police give them tickets. Okay, so these are some of the alternatives that have been considered. So here is potentially having a side path through town. Currently under DOT's proposal and the next one, cyclists would be sharing the lane. In an 11-foot lane, they'd be sharing the lane with traffic coming. That can be more comfortable, but this would be completely separating cyclists and mixing them with pedestrians in a wider, walkway, 10 feet wide. We looked at north and south side. Ultimately, we decided on the north side was easier to actually implement. So we would flip to the north side around Fitzsimmons or Old Beekman Lane. There are some compromises here. It does require reducing travel lane width and potentially parking lane width in order to get this to actually fit. Especially in the Village to Post section, there's a lot of constraints here. So this is, at least a snippet. Again, this plan is in the back room, so you can kind of see it end to end if there's a particular area or parking area you're compromising or looking at or interested in. This is what that section would look like. So you can kind of really just, the south side remains the same, 5-foot sidewalk, 7-foot parking, and then you've got the 10.5-foot travel lane, so slightly smaller. And then you've got your 10-foot side path. While this is great for cyclists and is great for people traveling through town, when you start to get around businesses and people, part of the reason we had it on the north side, people parking and opening their door zone, there are a lot of conflicts with this, especially when you have a lot of mixing zones. So while we do have this alternative here, and it is a possibility, it physically can fit, I personally lean towards this second alternative that we came up with, which is really DOT's plan with pushing the boundaries a little bit and really adding in more separation between sideways and the travelway, or between sidewalks and the travelway, adding in more opportunities for street trees and for curb extensions and other pedestrian elements. And some of the things that we've incorporated in here, like curb extensions, DOT already has added to their plans. So really, I want to, you can look through all the different elements and I'll walk through those. But generally speaking, as a section, we're looking at 5 to 6-foot sidewalks with more opportunities to create some sort of separation between the curb and the edge of the sidewalk. That could be, in some places it's just not possible and the sidewalk's going to be against the curb. In other places we might be able to get 3 feet. And other places we might be able to get 4 feet, which allows, if we're 4 feet or greater between the edge of curb and the sidewalk, then we can start to introduce street trees. So there's a couple of opportunities within the corridor to do that. Again, to do this, because we have a very constrained corridor, this does require some compromises, which is either going with 10.5-foot travel lanes instead of 11, which is within the minimum, but definitely not what DOT would recommend, and or reducing our parking lane from 8 feet to 7 feet. This again is what that section would look like. Again, this is a really ideal section, but you've got your 2 sidewalks and you start to have a little, see what separation might look like when you have like 1 or 2, 3 feet of space, some sort of stamped separation, and potentially adding in street trees to actually have that physical separation between the travelway and the sidewalk. So like I mentioned, as we went through the post to Village Green section, we also looked at a number of enhancements, particularly for pedestrian safety, but these also have traffic calming effects, getting vehicles to slow down and pay more attention to the pedestrians and the cyclists within the environment. So some of the crossing improvements and traffic calming that we have throughout our 2 different alternatives for this section in various conditions to various extremes is curb extensions. There's a sample photo. It's really just a bump out where it's parking protected. And so pedestrians don't have to, they don't have as long to cross the roadway in this unprotected area. Raised crosswalks. So it's basically a speed hump, but more of a table fashion. So your crosswalk's right on top of this raised part, which offers more visibility for the pedestrian because they're up higher. Allows them to also be better seen by drivers. We also looked potentially at a raised intersection at Rock City Road to kind of better define the full limits of this currently triangular intersection and really get pedestrian visibility up there. And then also potentially, instead of or in addition to these other treatments, looking at rectangular rapid flashing beacons, so RRFBs, which are pedestrian activated push buttons. So when you're going to cross, you get these flashing lights that kind of indicate to drivers, I'm crossing now, which have actually been found to significantly increase drivers yielding to pedestrians within the crosswalk. Okay. I'm going to jump into the post-to-post project. So the preliminary plans are in the back. DOT prepared those. What we're talking about is a 10-foot wide shared use path on the south side of Route 212. It would transition to a sidewalk just east of Sawkill Creek, Tribble Road, to actually make a sidewalk connection to the post offices there. So the side path would go majority of the way. But so we're not adding yet another bridge replacement into this project that was recently replaced. That would be our terminus for the actual side path. We would continue the sidewalk connection. This is what that cross section would look like. Currently, as proposed, it's 10-foot wide side path with a 3-foot strip, that grass or hardscape, I think, still to be determined, and then a curb, which provides your vertical separation, 4-foot shoulder, 11-foot lane, 11-foot lane, 4-foot shoulder, and then the north side would remain as is. These are just some examples, and I'll kind of get into some, there's different ways to implement a side path. These are along kind of similar New York State DOT roadways. There's plenty of other examples across the state, but I specifically went with state roadways. This is Route 100, where the separation is a guide rail. This is in Route 32 in Watervliet, New York. Very similar to what DOT is proposing here, where there's a curb separation and then some sort of lawn in between that and the side path. This is a very high traffic corridor, but slightly more urban. And then this is Route 299 in New Paltz. So this is not the Henry W. Du Bois project, but this connects directly to it. So this is Route 299. Some things to think about for side paths. So right now, again, we're in preliminary plans, and it is a standard section all the way down the corridor. This, potentially impacts some things. There might be some slope grading challenges, some mature trees that we may want to avoid. That's when we get into these next steps. And there are some variations that can occur when you're designing a side path to avoid certain conditions. If you have more than 5 feet between your edge of shoulder and your shared use path, then it can just be grass. You don't need any vertical separation, you don't need any delineation. So there is an opportunity to potentially pull the side path away from the corridor to avoid certain things, or to provide that separation, or to not have to introduce a curb. That does, the con to that is potentially more property acquisition. The other option is to pull the side path slightly closer to the right of way, or to the edge of shoulder, by using a median box beam median guide rail that's been implemented, which can require less separation. Curb stops, flex posts, things like that have also been implemented, but usually in lower speed conditions. So there is some pictures of that here, and you may find some examples of that, but pretty much a curb, actual physical distance, or a box beam median guide rail is going to be the most likely treatments in this kind of condition. The third thing that I wanted to talk about, and there's a third map back there, is really talking about the transition zone. So currently DOT's plans have the side path coming to the post office and then transitioning to 2 sidewalks. I question whether that was the correct transition point and really the gateway into the village center, and whether the side path should come further into town, or if it should stay at the post office. So we do have 3 alternatives as to where that transition might occur. So the first is, Woodstock Meadows Drive. So this would be the furthest to the west. And then if we were to bring that further, then cross actually at West Fitzsimmons Lane. What I've incorporated in these, and everyone's like, wait, parking's not on the north side currently. This is one thing that we were able to introduce with this concept, was actually switching parking to the north side, which has 2 benefits. One, there are some additional businesses on the north side through here, but primarily that it creates a little bit of a chicane effect. So right now this road is very, very straight. So it's an extra traffic calming feature to be able to create that kind of horizontal deflection within the corridor. So this would bring it up to Fitzsimmons Lane. And then another option would be bringing it all the way to just east of Old Beekman Lane. And again, you'll see those. So in a nutshell, I know that was a lot of information. We'll be around to answer questions and talk with you all. And again, we'll have the maps in the back, and we'll come back and do a more formal Q&A. But really the feedback I want to hear from the community, so that I can help the town to really tell DOT what we want them to consider, and what we're looking for, or you are all looking for, is what traffic calming and pedestrian elements do you want to see between the posts and the village green? Are you looking for a side path or a sidewalk in the town center, knowing that there are pros and cons to both alternatives? Do you prefer wider lanes, or do you prefer narrower lanes? Again, there are pros and cons to both those things. Thoughts on the side path from post to post. Where should this transition occur? And then part of that will also be coming back to answer your questions. So with that, that's me, my email address. So I think with that, we're going to break for a little bit. We'll have the people can go check out the posters in the back room. There are Grace, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are note cards and pens floating around. So we have a large crowd, so to help me manage questions and answers, feel free to write those down, and we'll get to as many as we can. Thank you. There's an eminent domain question that apparently we're starting with.
Here's a question. If you don't get the tackle of it, actually, we did what you
No.
No.
I can,
Okay.
ask me the question, I can answer the question. Don't hesitate to ask me questions because I will,
That's what they are. Okay.
they are what they are. If I don't know, I don't know.
Let's do it. And the first one, we're gonna ask, which a few people have written down, will this project involve eminent domain over some properties?
So yes, the question, the answer is yes. I will start off and that may or may not be the case in this room, but there's often a lot of misconceptions about eminent domain. Eminent domain is the process to acquire right of way. You'll go through the eminent domain process, whether you're being a willing participant or a reluctant participant in this process. And how that process occurs is, DOT will proceed through the design process, identify the additional right-of-way that's acquired, which in this case is really only a few feet back from the existing highway boundary in most cases. So it's, from a property percentage, it's insignificant, but it may feel significant. I recognize that. But it is not just a taking of that property. There is an assessment of your market value and how much that square footage is worth. And there is a payment to you since you lose that property and becomes part of the right of way. But again, in most cases, we're talking about a few feet. Did I misspeak on anything? Less than 10. I'd have to get an exact measurement and perhaps we can do this. I'm rounding up, but like 2 or 3 feet in some cases is what we're talking about. So let me also clarify, because I think this might have been another question. This is specifically for the post-to-post project, so making the extending the side path between the two post office out to Bearsville. All of the work occurring except for the bridge work. It appears that all of that work is being done within the existing highway boundary between the post and the village green. But there may be some right-of-way acquisition as it relates to the bridge project, but not, or the bridge replacements. So that's the right-of-way question.
So someone, yeah, go ahead.
Are you considering burying the power lines at the same time?
That is not part of the existing project as much as I think a lot of us would love it to be, but it is a really, really expensive endeavor. There just currently isn't the funding on top of everything else to do that. Huh? Central Hudson is who you want to advocate for burying your, thank you, Mark. Start a letter writing campaign, highly recommend it. I think it is actually in like their long-term vision to continue to bury more and more lines. So I did Google it at one point while we were working on this project. Have a little bit more resiliency when you bury the lines, but not part of this current project.
Okay, will property owners be responsible for snow removal? And is the property owner liable for slip-fall lawsuits on the sidewalk?
No, again, this is not through private property. This would be within the public right of way. So it would function just as it does today. Snow removal on sidewalks would remain as they do today, which I assume here is adjacent property owners are responsible for snow removal. Both. That would remain unchanged. For the side path, typically that is a town maintenance responsibility. It was actually key flipping points in New Paltz. I worked on that project with Neil, and there was a lot of advocates for sidewalks instead of side paths. And when it came to light that sidewalks are adjacent owner responsibility, but the side path, the town's going to plow it and clear it. And actually, it's a lot easier to plow a side path because it's wider, doesn't require specialized equipment. It's really easy to just take a pickup truck down it and clear it of its snow. That would be the town's responsibility, not the adjacent property owners. So that was a big tipping point in Henry W. Du Bois.
Okay, this is an older community. What evidence do you have that there's any real need or demand for a bike lane? That's the question.
Okay, you guys are testing me. I mean, statistically, Neil had talked, you're still here, I missed you. It brought up a lot of the good statistics. So it's hard to judge, and we find with a lot of these projects that, well, I don't see a lot of people walking out there now. I don't see a lot of people biking out there now. It's this latent demand that we really consider when it comes to planning and designing these. I can tell you, I'm an avid cyclist. I'm the strong and fearless. I would ride down 212, no problem. I understand, I expect it. But it's a different story if I want to take my kids to the library. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to put them in the car. I'm going to reluctantly do it. I'm going to hate myself for it. But that's what I'm going to do because even if they want to bike to the library, so there is that latent demand that now you have a safe facility, a place for people to walk and bike. Build it and they will come was true of roads. It's the same truth when it comes to building facilities for active transportation.
The fact that Woodstock is something like 17 to 18% over 65 years old. It's one of the oldest towns in the county. So the likelihood of a lot of elderly bikers is poor.
There is a lot, but yeah,
I just want to say one thing. If you see us sifting through the cards, we're just trying to group questions that are similar. We're not trying to take any hard questions out, obviously. Just to give Lucy a break, 2 people wrote comments. Yes, they live here. One moved here from the city. She doesn't drive. She doesn't feel safe riding, walking in town. Somebody else complained about Miracle Road being totally unsafe. So these 2 people live east of the town. This person is the response to the last question. As a young, I didn't write this, I promise you. As a young person who hopes to raise a family here, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to move forward with this project, with the plans which will shape the town for generations. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to turn the town into a walkable, bikeable community with enormous support from the state. Post to post should connect with you. Post to post should absolutely be the goal. We can't afford to miss this opportunity. So thank you whoever.
Okay. Here's one. There are so few people who would really use this path, post to post. Please help me understand this.
yeah. So I guess the latent demand, who might use it, is more than who would use it today. Last answer. The other thing that I will point out and raise is currently our transportation system is built for access for all drivers. And so there is this push and a push from the department, from New York State DOT, from our state government, as well as from our local governments up, that we need to have equity in our transportation so that if someone wants to bike safe, they can do so safely. If someone wants to walk, they can do so safely. And so part of this isn't just, well, we want to build it because we expect 200 people a day or whatever those numbers might be. We want to offer the opportunity for someone that wants to walk, wants to bike, can only walk, can only bike for transportation because they don't have a car or whatever it might be, giving them the same equal access to transportation. So there's also that component when it comes to a lot of these projects as well.
Okay, a few people have been asking us, what prevented you or the committee from choosing the north side of the post to post portion?
The utility poles. I can elaborate a little bit. A utility pole relocation is a huge disruption. It's a huge cost. It's really a huge schedule delay, a lot of coordination that goes along with it. And you're now pushing you've got to relocate the utility poles, or you've got to acquire additional right of way. So it's just balancing the existing available right of way, trying to limit the need to acquire additional right of way, and limit impact to existing infrastructure.
Okay, please clarify whether pedestrians and fast-moving road cyclists will be sharing the same pathway.
Technically, yes, but they often don't. With the post-to-post project, you have 4-foot shoulders, 11-foot travel lanes, and you have this protected mixed-use path that most cyclists and pedestrians are going to be using. For your transportation cyclists, that is like, I am going to cruise as fast as I can. Most of them feel confident in the roadway and will choose to be in the shoulder of the roadway as opposed to on the path, so that they just don't have to deal with conflicting with pedestrians. You can also have enforcement as far as speed and things like that, restricting those conflicts. But generally speaking, you find that those conflicts are fairly minimal.
Trail, how are they going to interrupt with pedestrians?
I didn't understand the question.
The bike trail is separate from the sidewalk, an accessible sidewalk. You just said that.
A side path is a mix of pedestrians and cyclists. It doesn't mean that cyclists have to use the side path. They can still ride in the road.
So why are we getting a bicycle pass if they don't have to use it?
Because most people aren't comfortable riding next to 45 mile an hour.
Makes no sense.
I personally am. Again, I'm not with my kids, and my husband's might do it. So that it's really, again, for this equity in transportation. So we're looking at all ages, all abilities, not just those that feel really confident.
2 questions here, together. Would our speed limit be reduced with all of these options? I am a walker. And do cars go slower if lanes are narrower?
Yes, they do. There's a little bit of a threshold, like if you're going from 14-foot lanes to like 13-foot lanes, you're not going to really see that much of a difference. Lane narrowing is one element. Planting street trees and having other kind of physical elements will reduce your speed limit. We're looking at or planning to lower the speed limits 25 miles an hour for the first portion of the project. I believe the town has requested DOT look into gradually lowering the speed limit, but not to 25, but something lower than what it currently is in the post-to-post section. And I assume DOT will evaluate that as they go through the design process as far as what makes sense. Again, a speed limit reduction has to reflect what you think drivers will likely do, because a speed limit sign really does nothing for speed enforcement.
How will you replace the rural charm and history of the current Woodstock?
A lot.
I'm not a contributor. I think there is a lot of opportunity within these projects. There is the investment in money, and right now you're seeing the lines on the map, and this is in the preliminary stages. I think as design has progressed, there is more opportunity, and maybe more opportunity in some than others, or in some areas than others, to incorporate some of these charm elements that makes Woodstock unique, as well as bring in more character into the community. So I think there is definitely opportunity for that, but we're really early in the process to talk about those kind of details.
How many trees will you have to cut down? And who will water the little replacement trees?
I don't have a number. Again, we're early in the process. The survey only picked up trees that were 12 inches, and not all of them. So that, kind of decisions. And again, I've talked about like the design can be finessed to potentially mitigate impact to mature trees. But trees that are planted, typically it is the contractor's responsibility to maintain them and warranty them for at least a year. Mark is nodding his head. I have it right. Thank you.
My farmhouse is across from the old Dixon Roadhouse on the north side of 212. I have a mature white pine lining the road. Will all of those trees be lost on the north side of the road? This is out by Dixon's restaurant.
Post to post, north side of the road.
Post.
No, not for this project.
Okay, please explain sidewalk versus side path.
Sidewalk versus side path. Yes. So sidewalk is exclusive for pedestrians. Some municipalities allow kids under the age of 12 to ride their bike on sidewalks. So I would say there is some mixed use already that exists within sidewalks. But a side path is basically a sidewalk, but wider and allows cyclists and pedestrians to use it as well.
So we need a bike path wide?
If you are allowing mixed use, then that minimum width is 10 feet.
Pedestrian walking, you take your bike on the road, then when pedestrian pass, you get back on the sidewalk.
That's legally not what you should be doing.
Well, it's been what's been going on in Woodstock for decades. And I'd love to see legality of that.
Okay, could there be three-way stop sign at Rock City Road? So we would all take. I don't know what this word is.
Take turns when 212.
This is crowded.
So an analysis has not been completed for Rock City Road for that intersection to change the actual traffic operation, whether it look at always stops or a signal or anything else. I don't believe that's part of the plan, but given my traffic engineering background and my educated best guess is that it likely wouldn't meet a warrant for an always stop. So the engineering protocol, try and break this down. So if you were to put in an always stop, or if you were put in a turn lane, if you were put in a signal, there are different warrants, different thresholds that you need to meet so that we don't over traffic operationally our roadway, right? So we want to make sure, because there's so much more traffic on 212, I don't believe it would meet that warrant. But I can take a look at least rough numbers to see if it makes sense.
How in the summer on a weekend?
That's the thing, and this is where a lot of people trip up, is that from a traffic perspective, you don't design for you design for the peak hour, but not the peak condition in season. Saratoga Springs is a really great example. If we were to design Saratoga Springs for every single time they had a concert or there was a big event at the track, then Saratoga Springs would be all road. It would be all highway. And that's why you just don't design for that kind of condition. But you do consider it, but you consider kind of the daily peak condition when you're designing elements like that.
I can't fully read this, but I know the people. We have a couple of people living out in Bearsville Flats who are sight impaired, one fully blind, and they're asking what safety signals and to move through crosswalks and humps in the road. If I understand, they're looking for some safety if they have to cross in this route.
Right. So part of this project, no matter what is implemented, will include bringing everything up to ADA standards. That includes detectable warning strips. Currently, the only additional assistance, other than just making crosswalks more visible, like tactile warning strips would be there. Potentially the RFBs, they think they have the ability to come with an auditory signal, like would be on a signal, so it can direct someone that is visually impaired to know to push the button. But generally speaking, a lot of these curb extensions and raised crosswalks and things that we're talking about will make it safer for all pedestrians, including those with disabilities.
At the town, my oldest son was visually impaired, blind, and we had, because the bus came, we had outside my door a sign that said, "Be careful, visually impaired."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it wasn't lit up. And then, you know, when he graduated, it was taken downtown, didn't know, it was Glasgow Turnpike, so. What's that, Ulster County. But you can get a sign if you're visually impaired or physically from the town or the county. Doesn't flash, but it's yellow. And it
Yep,
says
warning signs.
Blind, impaired, whatever. They should do that now.
Thank you.
I'm gonna try and read this, Jackie. As an ADA advocate, I don't like the design idea. It's by far not doable. No matter what you try to call it. This is before this, which I was, you started a lot of ADA. You wanted ADA compliance in Woodstock, and I know you started that conversation, and we're hoping that we can fulfill that. But no one has listened in the past. So is there a question?
Oh, a lot of people have listened in the past, except you joined on both,
Okay,
and
Okay.
then added this whole bicycle trail thing.
okay,
When all we needed was a simple, low tax paying, accessible sidewalk.
so your final statement is no bike trails, is that it?
Cut me off, go ahead, yeah,
Okay,
no
well,
bike trails.
that's okay.
You need accessibility for people with disabilities, period,
We're gonna go.
and what you're spending is malarkey.
Why is the town keeping so many parking spaces in the new design?
Why are we keeping so many? That was opposite from what I was expecting. Yeah, so, you know, parking is maintained as much as possible throughout the corridor. The side path concept does have less than the sidewalk concept. What we did go through, because we know with all the businesses along the corridor that, you know, parking is important. And so, we did take away a few spaces to have curb extensions. We did, really a lot of what you're seeing is everything striped out so that everything is legal. I think a lot of people may say, well, we're going to lose parking. I would argue you're not legally allowed to park there right now anyway. And really, it comes at a safety risk for other drivers and for pedestrians by blocking sight lines. So really, we're just hardscaping or proposing to hardscape those. So people can't physically park there and everyone can have the visibility that they need to get out of side streets and cross the roadway. But most of the parking has been maintained because it seemed really desired by the community and used. I mean, it's fairly well used.
Because right now, we need parking on the street because the sidewalks are prevented. Like, I am not a senior yet, but I'm getting there. But I don't wanna walk on those sidewalks, they're awful, but what we're gonna get is an amazing set of new sidewalks. And then we're gonna maintain all that on-street parking rather than like kind of letting the town breathe. Like, it's impossible on the weekends to drive through town. I lived here for a year and a half before I even knew what any of the businesses were because I just refused to come in. Like, I just flat out refused to come into Woodstock because you couldn't get through. It was a pain in the neck. And so, like, I wonder if we can, like, really think outside the box a little bit and think about, okay, we're gonna have great sidewalks. Where can we put the handicap spot that we need? And then what else can we do with this space down here to make it like more of a community space? Like, I would love to see that in some of the designs and some of the alternatives.
There's a question that goes with that. Would it be possible to widen the sidewalks across from the green so that we can have outdoor dining?
So we did, you know, through this process, I took kind of the generic and trying to keep parking as much as possible. And Police Streets Committee did a demonstration project. We actually got a highway work permit from DOT to close off the parking lane. You know, so I think with mixed results.
Yes.
Was the response to closing off on-street parking for blocks. I think it's a good to strive for that. I think it can be hard for people to see losing parking without that comfortable bicycle and pedestrian facility there. So it may be something that is more accepting of the community, 5 years from now when the project's implemented, but I think it can be hard for a community to kind of see how everything can still be accessible given its current condition. But a lot of the alternatives we did look at were, oh, hold on. I just need it to not be on one of the white ones. Um, yeah, but we did look at an alternative to completely eliminating parking on the green section. And it's some of the treatments that you saw in the maps, and hopefully we can try and get those posted so everyone can take a closer look at them. Some of the differences between those two concepts included eliminating more parking to create more of that buffer space and more of that streetscape space. So it's certainly worth something considering, and also can be done in stages potentially.
Okay, we're pushed out of time already, but we're gonna try to rush through these very briefly. If no grant, back to the original plan of DOT.
So if the TAP grant is not awarded, then the post to post section continues to linger until it gets funded. But the green to post, the Village Green to Post Office project, that project is fully funded for design and construction.
But post will be designed.
Yes.
Yeah. Considering the sidewalk is going through our front yard, do we get a vote? If so, when is it?
I did get this question before. Every town is different on how they decide to proceed on these projects. But ultimately, I have never seen a transportation project actually get put to a like public vote. They're heavily influenced by public comment and public opinion, but ultimately this is a transportation facility that needs to be planned and designed by professionals. So oftentimes it is not put to a public vote for those reasons. It is also New York State DOT's roadway. It does come through Woodstock, but this is a DOT facility. So we're really here to influence the department and hopefully have them do what we'd like them to do.
These others are statements in support, so I'm not gonna take the time to read them all right now. But here's the last question. Could you provide simulations using our own streets?
Yes, I can, but it's time. Yeah, I mean, again, the presentation will be made available. So you can kind of see what those cross sections there are. Yeah.
It wasn't quite there, it was a streetscape, so if you were to do those simulations with the Woodstock streetscape instead of what looks like, an engineering, just anywhere place, it would be helpful to see it. I would help me, and I've been in planning myself, and I think it would help the community.
Yeah, it's something we can look into providing.
Oh. Yes,
Hey, I don't remember who it was that wrote the response to criticisms that's been posted and published recently. But in that response, it was said there would be no eminent domain and no parking spaces would be lost. So I would just hope that from now on, there would be honesty and candor. I'm not saying it was from your committee. I don't remember who it was from. But now we're hearing something different than we just read like this week.
This is the start of it, right? So move forward here with all the facts and then just keep getting everything. Thank you.
yeah, and we do plan on having more meetings and more opportunity to discuss this and a chance to get more information. We want to thank you for coming here tonight.
Thank you.